One subject that's been brought to our minds in the past 2 or 3 months, and is going to be brought to our minds more in the next 6.5 years, more than any other subject, is something we found a lot of the church people weak in. We found a lot of church people falling back and actually being blinded and ensnared by Satan the devil. I'm going to read from a Bible. You all listen very carefully. Honor the physician, for the need thou hast of him. For the Most High hath created him. For all healing is from God, and he shall receive gifts of the King. The skill of a physician shall lift up his head, and in the sight of great men he shall be praised. The Most High has created medicines out of the earth, and a wise man will not abhor them. Was not bitter water made sweet with wood? The virtue of these things is come to the knowledge of men, and the Most High has given knowledge to men, that he may be honored in his wonders. By these he shall cure, and shall allay their pains. And of these the apothecary shall make sweet confections, and shall make up ointments of health. And of his works there shall be no end. For the peace of God is over all the face of the earth. My son, in your sickness, neglect not yourself, but pray to the Lord, and he shall heal thee. Turn away from sin, and order your hands aright, and cleanse your heart from all offense. Give a sweet savor, a memorial of fine flour. Make a fat offering, and then give place to the physician. For the Lord created him. Let him not depart from thee, for his works are necessary. For there is a time when you must fall into their hands. And they shall beseech the Lord, that he would prosper what they give, for ease and remedy, for their conversation. He that sins in the sight of his Maker shall fall into the hands of the physician. Reading from a Bible. Now today I want to talk to everyone here that's a fanatic, that's gone overboard, that thinks God is the healer, and nothing else is any good. Of all of you that are against polio vaccine and flu virus, of all of us that are fanatical in our ideas about medicine. Now you shouldn't take any medicine, no sir. God's the healer and he doesn't heal with medicine. Now I want to talk to all of us that are fanatics. How do you explain that there are some 600 people alive in this past year, just in the one city of Chicago, that would not have been alive except for the polio vaccine? If the polio vaccine hadn't come along this year, there would be 600 more people lying 6 feet under the ground than there are today because we have that vaccine. And how can you fight against facts? How can you deny facts? Reading from the 1958 World Almanac, we find some surprising statistics. In 1900, out of 1,000 people, or percentage-wise, there was 26 8/10 involved in typhoid fever that were taken with the sickness. In 1950, there was 1/10. Now notice that from 1900 to 1950, the rate of typhoid fever dropped from 26 8/10 to 1/10. In 1956, 0. Negligible. Measles. The rate in 1900, 10. The rate in 1950, 3/10. The rate in 1956, 4/10. Diphtheria. The rate in 1900, 32 8/10. The rate in 1956, 0. Pneumonia. The rate in 1900, 184. The rate in 1956, 28. Now how can we stick our heads in the sand and deny these facts? And yet we can see that in the past year, people have benefited from the polio vaccine. We can see that in the period of 50 years, people have benefited. And so we find a lot of the church people wondering and asking questions about certain divine healings, about certain remedies, such as Dr. Hoxie in Dallas with his Hoxie Clinic for cancer. We find questions about, well, now what about Mr. Roberts, Oral Roberts? Or what about A.A. Allen? Or what about this man or that man? And you know, some of us have a blind pulled over our face. And what's the answer? And if a person opens the book and reads you these facts, if a person opens the Bible and reads what I read to you, where are you going to find an answer? And you know, the Bible says that unless the time was shortened, they would deceive even the very elect. Now, a lot of us, we get fanatical about fertilizers in food, in gardening, in farming. And yet, if I had a farm, I used artificial fertilizer, I could take you out next year, show you taller corn, show you greener corn, show you more ears of corn per stalk, show you more acreage and more corn produced than you'd see if I used natural fertilizer. How do we give an answer for that? Well, maybe we should look into a few of these things. I have a book here I'm going to read portions of today. It's a confession of an ex-medical doctor, of a man that rather than stick strictly with drugs and medicines, tried to water that down a little bit and get back more to a natural means of healing with more natural medicines. And so he awoke and found himself in a hornet's nest. And fairly soon he was no longer a doctor. Fairly soon he got kicked right out of one of the most dominating groups of men in this land, the American Medical Association. Well, that man turned then after that to petroleum engineering. Now that's quite a strange change. And he wrote a book about things he'd been guilty of in medicines, about things doctors were guilty of. Now, you know, in the first place, the Bible I read out of was the Dowey version. In the first place, I read out of the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 38. That isn't Ecclesiastes. There are only 12 chapters in Ecclesiastes anyway. I read out of Ecclesiasticus 38. And just like the physicians of this world, they came from the same place this Bible did, out of Babylon. Now, in reading out of the World Almanac, I read like I would have read 10 years ago as a Baptist. I read one verse and skipped a verse, read another verse and skipped a verse, read another verse and skipped a verse. Because here's one I didn't want to read. The rate of diabetes, 1900, 12 and 2/10, 1956, 16. The rate of heart disease, 1900, 338, 1956, 513. Now, I could read others in here, motor vehicle accidents. And as you find, if you refer to the latest World Almanac, all the more serious disease, all the ulcers, and maybe I should read about the ulcers here, but the ulcers, cancer in 1900, 67. In 1956, 146. Now, you get the more serious disease, cancer, ulcers, tumors, triple, quadruple, in the past 10 or 15 or 40 or 50 years. Now, the same thing we have to watch for in health foods as we have to watch for in medicines. Now, these 600 people that are alive in Chicago today, because they took polio vaccine, Where are they going to be 2 years from now? Where are they going to be 5 years from now? Well, you know, they're going to be the same place, that field that you used artificial fertilizer on. Because, you know, if you use artificial fertilizer on a land, it takes all the vitality, all the goodness, all the value out of that soil and fires it all into 2 or 3 years. And so the first 2 or 3 years you get that. But you know, the Proverbs say a man's not wise that looks past the tip of his nose. A man's not wise that considers the end of an invention. And so it isn't necessary to follow what you see with your eyes. Because you could have a demon-possessed man right up here. I could bind him with log chains. He could just snap them like that. If I drove my automobile in here, he could pick it up with one hand. And those of us with the Spirit of God could reach down and couldn't pick up the same car. We have the Spirit of God, he has a demon. And those of us that are following our eyes and going by sight, we're in for a terrific fall in the next few years. A lot of us, we've been doing that. We've gone to these tent meetings and we've seen a man lame go down. We've seen him supposedly walk right out of there healed. You know, it's a strange way that these men, these divine healers, have a power over the press. They have a power with certain lawyers. I have proof of that myself because I was in the church up in Portland, Oregon for about 2 years, very national headquarters of the Wings of Healing. Now one day I was aghast and startled to see large headlines on the Portland Oregonian about this large type. Wyatt sued for fraud. Wings of Healing sued for fraud. Well, I was interested in that story naturally. So I tried to find it in the next day's paper, and I couldn't find it. Not on the funny page, not on the 18th page, not on the front page. You couldn't find it anywhere in the paper. We never read another word about it. Of course, we found a little later that some corrupt things came out of Portland, Oregon. That those weren't the only strange things that were going on there. Now, this wasn't some fanatic that had been there and sat in on the meetings, but this was the ex-secretary for the Wings of Healing. Now, if you've doubted in your mind whether these men can heal or not, I'll give you warning right now, you're in danger. You're in danger of being one of the very ones that Satan is going to nip off the edge, that he's going to drag back in with blindness. Because you know you have a direct scripture. God gives his Spirit to them that obey him. Now you never hear a sign of preaching in these services except healing, and that's all you hear. You never hear any commandments preached. You would never know what they believed except healing. You could attend for months and you'd never know what they believed. Now I've visited enough of those people to know, and you say, well, do you believe in the Trinity? Oh, I don't know. Well, do you believe in the Holy Spirit? Holy Ghost, not the Spirit. And those people don't know what they believe, not for 1 minute. But you know, we get the same way with medicines, and you get the same way with the little pills that you get from the health food store. The same thing. If you're going to walk by sight, if you're going to look and see now if that muscle flexes up, or if you perk up with a little bit of energy the very next day after you take a pill, you're going to find it. You find that you will. If you're going to look maybe 3 hours after you take a pill, you will notice that you have more energy. But I'll guarantee you 4 years from now, you're going to notice that you should be 80 instead of 70, that you feel like you're 60 instead of 50, that you're actually doing the same thing that artificial fertilizer does and takes 7 years and crams it into 3 and ruins the land completely. Then you have to vacate it. Now that's exactly what you're doing if you're messing with a lot of health food pills, a lot of so-called vitamins, natural organic. You know, they put pork products in there, natural organic. Yes, it is, natural organic. Pork products and pills. What's unnatural about it? What's inorganic about it? I was reading in Life magazine, just out of interest, about whalers up in Canada. Now, this book wasn't about medicines at all. I didn't even have the slightest idea. I didn't know it had a thing in there about foods. I just thought it'd be an interesting experience of these men going out whaling, and how they'd catch the whales and what they'd do after they caught them, how they'd skin them and take the valuable parts away from the whale. So I was reading it because it sounded interesting. You know, a little later I was just flying on across there, reading as rapidly as I could, and I flew across there and said, then we take them in and process them and put them in vitamins. I went on down the line and said, wait a minute now, back up there, what was that? And they take whale meat that's unclean meat and put it in a vitamin and call it natural organic. Well, a lot of times we get diabetic cases. We think, well, now, the insulin, that's the same as a crutch. If you're lame, it's the same as a crutch. If you have weak eyes, your glasses are the same as using insulin if you have diabetic condition. But you know, the biggest part of the insulin is made from pork. And so then we overlook a natural law of God, one that's as plain as the nose on your face, the law of clean and unclean meats, and a lot of our vitamins. And these little capsules you swallow, what do you think they're made out of anyway? These little gelatin capsules. Well, all gelatin comes from pork anyway. Has pork in it, the biggest percent of it, unless you can get some pure beef gelatin. Well, you know, we better be looking a little farther than the end of our nose. We better be checking into these things and let the Bible be your guide. You know, it says, to the law and the prophets, and if it speaks not according to these, it's because there's no light in them. Now, you know, that's very clear. And if you think the Bible can't be a guide to you in what to eat, you're wrong. If you think the Bible can't guide you in diet, you're wrong. And you'd be surprised how many places in the Bible you can find what they ate. What the angels eat. What would you feed angels if they came to your house and you happened to be sitting out under the shade tree like Abraham was? And here came two angels in Christ, and they were going to step into your house and eat with you. What would you feed them? You better know what Abraham fed them. And what would you feed them? Well, I guarantee if you offered him some little pills, he wouldn't take them. A lot of other things, too, that he wouldn't take. Yes, we've got a lot of laws in the Bible we overlook. Now, you know, we have a warning that Satan, in Revelation 13, is going to work all manner of lying wonders, false miracles, deceiving people. And notice one thing he does. He doesn't do these in secret. He doesn't do these privately. You know, a lot of us are just looking for the day that God's church will be able to tell you now, if you're lame, to walk right up here, and we're going to lay our hands on you and say, rise up and walk. And you know, if a man came in the door over here and preached about half the truth, and he could do something like that, a lot of us would be led away just like blind sheep. Because a lot of us aren't convinced about medicines and doctors and drugs. A lot of us really don't know the difference between a natural food and an artificial food. Well, it's about high time we knew. In Revelation 13, here's one token in a way that you can tell whether God does the healing or someone else. Verse 12, Revelation 13. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the great and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Now, how's he going to get you to worship the Roman Empire? How's he going to entice you and make you worship the Roman Empire? You think just by a club? There's more ways than that. That's going to be the final way. He is going to have to use that on a lot of us. His deception is going to be so great that he won't have to use that. And he does great wonders so that he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth. Now, do you really think a demon-possessed person can do that? Well, you know, it says he will, doesn't it? It says that Satan and his churches, you read of in 2 Corinthians 11, he has churches, but Satan and his churches are going to have the power to make fire come down from heaven on the earth. Here's the key, in the sight of men. Now, why does he do that? As a show-off? Why does he do that? For someone's good? No. He does that to deceive you and make you worship the beast. He does that to ensnare you. This is part of the lying wonders and miracles. He does that to trip you up and make you deny part of your faith. He does great wonders. Yes, he can make fire come down from heaven on the earth. But he does that in the sight of men. He does it openly. He does it in a meeting and advertises it and says, now everyone come. We're going to have great power. We're going to show you some real miracles. Everyone welcome. All of you come. They'll have an affidavit sworn that they can do that. They're going to have all kinds of proof. And you're going to be enticed to go. And if you go and you judge by what you see, you too are going to be worshiping the beast and Satan. If you don't let the Bible be your sole guide and authority, you too are going to fall. He does this in the sight of men and deceives them that dwell on the earth. How? By the means of those miracles, plural, miracles, more than one, the miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. Always in the sight of. They never do it secretly. You know, there was a man up in one of the churches in Oregon, the Church of Christ, some of the other instruments of Satan, and he was over the radio, and he put out a challenge over the radio and said, now some of you Church of God preachers, we want to meet you up here in the Salem graveyard next Sunday. We'll all be out there. We're going to dismiss our regular services. We're going to have our services out the graveyard. 1 o'clock next Sunday afternoon. And we challenge and invite all of you Church of God ministers out there. We want to see you raise some dead. We want to see you heal some sick people. We challenge you to come out there. So they had their church services out the graveyard. Needless to say, they had them the same as they did the weeks before by themselves. You know, it's just exactly like the Jews came to Christ and said, we want to see a sign. We want to see a sign. We're not going to believe you. And you know, even the magicians in the days of Moses, filled with the power of Satan, could perform lying wonders. Well, they want to do these in the sight of men, in the sight of the beast. And as we read then in Matthew 24, if it were possible, he'd deceive even the very elect by these miracles that he has power to do. Now, you know, we shouldn't need to read a whole lot of scriptures about these other so-called divine healings. I don't care what you've seen with your eyes. And you know, when people usually talk to you about that, they say, well, I saw this with my very eyes. Well, are you walking by your eyes, or are you? Now, some of us think this is divine healing. Deafness and interference with the sense of hearing may be caused by a retention of wax in the outer ear. This may be removed by soaking the entire external canal in warm olive oil, which can be poured in while lying on the side. Now, you know, if you go to certain doctors today, some of them will say, well, use eucalyptic oil. Another one will say, well, use cod liver oil. Another one will say, well, use this kind of oil. Now, you go ahead and use all those if you want to, but you know, the Bible, they always use olive oil. You think you can improve on that? Well, you go ahead and try it. I'll guarantee you can't. You can use all kinds of oil you want. The olive oil is a symbol of the very Holy Spirit that does all the healing. Olive oil is a symbol of the very Spirit of God that dwells in you, that did all the miracles that Christ did. You know, Christ said of himself, he did nothing. You know, Christ didn't perform a single miracle. He said of himself, he did nothing. But you know, he said the works he did, the Father did, through his Spirit that dwelt in him. And you know, for that same reason, he said, if we believe today, the works he did, we'd do also, and even greater. Even greater works than Christ did when he was here, we can do today. Because the same Spirit that worked miracles through Christ works through the body of Christ today. The same body of Christ. The only difference, then it was the literal body of Christ. Today it's the spiritual body, his church. The body of Christ, the church. The same Spirit that worked the miracles through the body of Jesus Christ works the same miracles through the body of the church. But even greater. Why? Because Christ is up there. Because now you have Christ up there interceding as well as the same Spirit working. So he didn't say the day of miracles is going to wane. It's going to peter out and fall. We'll have to turn to physicians. He didn't say, as we read in this Bible, when you're sick, pray to God, repent of your sins, and then give it over to the physician. Then let the physician step in. Because God created the medicines out of the earth. And you know, doctors have a way about lying. It's direct lying. They say, oh, this is a natural medicine. Now, there's nothing unnatural about this. I've seen them deceive poor elderly people, young people, all kinds of people with their rotten lies. They're lies that Satan put in their mouth because they're being used by Satan. They had physicians back in the days of Abraham, in the days of Isaac, but they didn't show honor to them back then. They didn't give their lives over to them and worship them then as they do today. They called them by dirty names then. We're going to use some of those dirty names today. You know, we have a way of escaping things today that makes me about as mad as anything I know of. We do something that's filthy and dirty and rotten, then we make a joke about it. And so all of our television, all of our funny papers, they're just laughs about a man that's run by his wife. Or they're laughs about children and the evil thoughts they have. Or they're laughs about divorce and remarriage. And so we laugh it off, and so people think, well, it's all right to do it then. Or we have harlots over in Hollywood that we call Miss. They've been married 8 times, we still call them Miss. Now, if they've been married twice, you might call them a miss, but I'm not going to do it anymore. It's going to be to me just exactly like some things in the Bible are. And a lot of people ask me, what kind of Bible you use anyway? I've tried to follow you through, and it seems that you have a different translation. King James, same as yours exactly. But when I see holy, G-H-O-S-T, that spells spirit to me. And T-H-E-E, that's you. And T-H-I-N-E, that's yours. Now, there's nothing holy about that language. Unless you want to worship the English language of 1611. And you know, about 5 years from now, ain't's going to be a word. It wasn't in the past. Neither is thee and thine and thou today. Now, that's the same way when you read these Miss Monroe or Miss this or Miss that that's been married 6 or 8 times, and half the time they're still married, and yet they call them a Miss. Now, how can you be a Miss and be married? Thought your name changed to MRS when you got married. Does for everybody but actresses, doesn't it? Now, you know, God said in 1 Corinthians 7, she shall be called an adulteress. And you know, if every girl that ever came into this church or ever came into this work, if we did them the way they did in the Old Testament, and if they've had illicit sexual relationships, just call them harlots. Don't call them lady or young lady anymore. Don't call them girl or woman. But immediately when they enter into an illicit relationship, they're harlots from that time forward. Now, you know that's the way they call them in the Bible. And all this row that modernists make about this new Revised Standard Version of the Bible, why, it knocks in the head. Isaiah 7:14 about the divinity of Christ. It calls his mother a young woman instead of a virgin. Now, you know they only had 2 classes of people in the Old Testament, young woman or harlot. Now, if you were a young woman, you were automatically a virgin. If you weren't, you were a harlot. You weren't a young woman. Well, we're going to get to the name of these men today. We call them physicians. That's a lie. They're not physicians. Luke was a physician. Christ was a physician. I could bear the name of a physician, but not these medical doctors, not these doctors and physicians, whatever else you want to call them. We'll see what the Bible calls them. And then we'll use that term ourselves from now on. Then maybe you'll knock that faith you've got in those men in the head. Maybe you'll see how weak and how rotten and underhanded they are. Now, when I read out of this book of an ex-medical doctor, some of you might get so mad you're just going to have to loosen your collar, you're going to sweat, or you're going to start wiping sweat if I don't start jumping around too much to read it. Deafness. Now, let's read here. An interference with the sense of hearing. This may be removed by soaking the entire external canal in warm olive oil, which can be poured in while lying on the side. Allow the oil to remain for several minutes. Repeat this for a number of days when the wax can be easily removed with a small ear spoon. A common cause of deafness is a chronic state of enlargement of the tonsils. Of course, an injury to the ear may cause a complete deafness, which cannot be cured by any means. Now notice, he mentions here, this is a dietary book, and he mentions if the ear is damaged physically, it cannot be healed by any means, as a broken eardrum cannot be replaced. Naturally, that's true. With medicines, that's true. But you know, there's somebody else that does a little healing too that people seem to have gotten away from. The most common cause is no doubt a catarrhal state of the nose and throat, and if this is the real cause, the cure is certain as soon as the catarrh is treated and disposed of. Now, catarrh is the same thing that settles in your sinus if you have sinus trouble. It's the same thing that settles in your joints if you have arthritis, rheumatism, lumbago. It's the same thing that settles in your veins and your hearts if you have a hardening of the arteries. If you have any type of heart disease, the same poison. It's the same poison, no matter who it might be. Now, where it settles depends on how weak you are. You know, Judas Iscariot wasn't the one that turned Christ in thousands of years before he did it. You know, he wasn't predestined, as though he had blinds on. There's only one way he could go. He wasn't preordained to be the one that would turn Christ in, and there was no way he could get out of it. But you know, he was the one because he was the weakest. He was the one because he had his heart wrapped up in the money bag he carried. He was the one because he did less praying and less studying. He showed less attentiveness when Christ talked to him than any of the rest. That's why he was the one. That's the only reason. Now that's the same way with you. Whatever might be the weak organ in your body, that's where that poison is going to settle. Now if you've had weak sinus, that's where it'll hit. If you've had weak heart, that's where it'll strike you. If you've had weak muscles and joints, that's where it's going. But it's the same poison in every case. Case 26, a male, 65 years of age. This patient was a retired physician who had been totally deaf for about 10 years. He came to me. Now here's a physician, a man that's supposed to be a healer, coming to a man that just believed in changing the way you eat. Now we might use the parable Christ used, or was used of Christ. Physician, heal yourself. What's the matter with you? Aren't you the healer of the people? What are you coming to us for, just because we know about dieting? A retired physician who'd been totally deaf for 10 years. Now we have 3 types of healing. You have 3 different types of healing. Now, if this man had gone into an Oral Roberts healing campaign, he would have come up in the line, and when he came up to his time in the line, the hands would have been placed on him, a prayer of faith would have been offered. They would have snapped their fingers and talked to the man before they prayed for him, and he couldn't hear a word. He'd shake his head. No, he couldn't hear a thing. Then after they prayed for him, they'd have cymbals there, and they'd go, clang, right in his ear. Yes, he heard something then. Now, that's some of the tricks they use. They do that. Now, this is Satan the devil. This isn't something we have to be careful about. You think we need to let Satan run rampant and drag our sheep aside just because we're afraid to tell him what he's doing? We don't have to run from any of these divine healers. They don't follow what God commanded. They don't have the Spirit of God. And you can say that without any doubt. You don't have to be afraid of committing the unpardonable sin when you do that. I've never seen one of them keep the Sabbath yet. I've never seen one of them very sober-minded about having one wife yet. God gives His Spirit to them that obey Him. You can be assured of that. You can know when the Spirit of God's there. Well, this man didn't go to Oral Roberts to be healed, and neither did he go to God to be healed. He went to a dietitian, where a lot of us put our faith. And what a lot of us don't even know the difference between that and divine healing. Now here's a man that was a physician. He was an instrument of Satan the devil, maybe even had a demon. He had nothing to do with God at all. And if this is divine healing, why did God heal this man? Now maybe he was an agnostic. Maybe he was an atheist. He didn't even believe in God. But he came to this man. He came to me in the hope that I might be able to give him a diet. Now, what's the matter with the rotten physicians? Don't they know anything about diets? Absolutely not. How many doctors or how many physicians have you ever been to, and they said, now look, this is what you're eating that's done this to you. Look, this is why you're in this rotten shape you're in. Now look, man, if you just quit overeating, that's all you have to worry about. You're such a glutton, that's your whole trouble. Now, you know, you've never seen a physician do that. Now, if you come to us for anointing, we think that's true in your case, don't think we're not going to tell you about it. Well, here's a physician that didn't know beans from apple butter about a diet, going to another man to get a diet from him. He thought I might be able to give him a diet which would relieve the catarrhal condition in his head and throat which had existed all his life. He remembered having catarrh as a boy. He was never entirely free from it at any time. But in spite of all the treatments he took in his endeavors to overcome the troubles, it gradually increased through the years, so that when he presented himself to me for treatment, he was using several handkerchiefs daily. He gradually became deaf during the years of his practice, and the last few years had been spent as a specialist on a certain branch of medical science where acute hearing was not essential. After becoming totally deaf, he found it hard to continue his practice at all, then he retired. I explained the benefit of the fasting. Yes, the name of this book is The Fast Way to Health. Now, he doesn't mean the rapid way. He doesn't mean the quick way. He means the fasting, doing without food, as a way to health. I explained the benefit of the fasting cure for his catarrhal condition, and this great physician didn't know one thing or another about it. He didn't know a thing about fasting. Suggested that his hearing might be regained. You mean a man that's totally deaf for 10 years could get his hearing back without God even having a thing to do with it? Of course, he did not believe this after eminent specialists had failed to help him. So he'd gone to all the specialists, and when he got off the top of the world, then he came down to these peasants, this scum of the earth, these fanatics. He came down and asked them about a diet. He started on an orange juice fast to rid his system of catarrh. During the fast, he used only the juice of 6 oranges daily, one taken every 2 hours with a plentiful supply of water. The fast was continued for 25 days. It's not rapid healing, is it? Fasting. After the 10th day, certain loud noises could be heard. His hearing continued to improve, and on the 18th day of the fast, he passed the test used for railway trainmen and could hear a watch tick 18 inches from either ear. Well, he did a little better than going to Oral Roberts, didn't he? He could hear a watch ticking 18 inches. Instead of a loud cymbal right nearly smashing his ear, he could hear a watch 18 inches away. Well, did he have divine healing? Is that divine healing? Well, I didn't read anything about calling for the elders of the church, did I? I didn't read anything about anointing and a prayer of faith, did I? Is that divine healing? Do some of us have our trust in health healing, in dietary healing, such as Dr. Hoxie uses, such as Dr. McCoy here uses, such as other doctors, chiropractors, naturopaths use? Well, what is divine healing then? Now, you know, there are different ways of healings. In the first place, we need to know, as no man has ever told us, what makes you sick in the first place but Christ. And you know, he said that there was a man sick of the palsy in Matthew 9. And he came to this man and said, "Son, be of good cheer. Your sins are forgiven." The man stood up and walked then. Now, forgiving sins healed him then. Well, now these people scratched their head and they said, "Now wait a minute, what is he talking about?" They didn't understand that. They said, what does he think he can forgive sins? And you know, they didn't know the difference between spiritual sins and physical sins, because they didn't know the difference between the eternal law and the temporary law. They didn't know the difference between keeping the law in the letter and in the spirit. They thought they were all in the same thing. But now you notice here then, sickness comes because you've sinned. The man was deaf because he had poison in his body. He kept putting it in, kept putting it in. A physician that knew all about healing everybody else, making himself sicker every day. Putting a poison into his body day after day after day that made him sicker. Finally made him deaf. He did it to himself. A physician that healed others. Why couldn't he take care of himself? Now, if I come up here wheezing and sneezing and just barely being able to move like some men do because of arthritis and rheumatism and just creep up here, and then I preach to you about healing, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to either sleep or you're going to get up and walk out the door, or you're going to say, well, he better be just talking to himself there. When he heals himself, maybe we can listen to him. But if I came in a big, tall, husky, strong person without any physical infirmities whatsoever and started telling you about healing, well, you know, you'd listen more, wouldn't you? Now, here's a physician that supposedly healed other people, came to one of these crackpots that believe in diet changes, and to his amazement, got his hearing back. He'd been deaf for 10 years, and it took 18 days to get his hearing completely back. And yet that man wasn't healed divinely at all. That's not divine healing. Some of us have come that far away from medicines and physicians. Some of us are at that step. We're still not trusting God. We don't see the difference in these kinds of healings. Well, here's one thing Dr. McCoy does. He says, look, you've got poison in there. You've got catarrh that's blocking your ear passages. Now, if we can drain the catarrh out, if we can just unscrew the plug and drain your crankcase like you would in an automobile, now that's the best example you can get. Now, if somebody puts sand in your gas tank, you go out and you run your car around a little while. Well, it starts making noises and starts giving you trouble. You say, well, and you get to checking around, well, what do you know? There's signs of dirt at the spout of the gas tank. So you drain your gas tank out. Now, you're not going to have any more trouble with sand, are you? After you've drained your gas tank out, you got all that sand out, you put new gasoline in there and get you a lock this time, you can lock your tank. Is that where you stop? Have you healed your car completely? Or can you put sand in your gas tank without damaging your car? Now, there's the difference, and there's the difference in divine healing and going on a diet or draining poison out of your body. You can't put poison in your body without paying for it. Anytime you put poison in your body, there's an automatic penalty that comes on you immediately that your body has to pay because you put the poison in there. Now, it isn't after you put it in there and it gets down in your stomach and starts stirring everything up and you feel dizzy and sick and all, and you say, well, I must have committed some sin. Now, that doesn't make it all right if you drain that out all of a sudden, does it? Once it gets past this right here, it's already a sin. As long as it's on the plate out here, it isn't a sin. I don't care whether it's a ham or whether it's wine, whether it's whiskey or what it is. As long as it's on the plate out here, it isn't a sin. But when it gets past these lips, if it's poison, then it is. And automatically, you start paying the penalty as soon as it starts down. And the damage that poison has caused, there's only one way you can be healed of it. You can drain the poison out later, yes, by fasting. Or you can do like Dr. Hoxie does, and he takes barks, roots, leaves from trees, combines them all as in his secret ingredient. You drink that down, it neutralizes the poison. So he doesn't bother with trying to drain it out because some people don't like to fast for 30 days with certain liquids. So he says, well, look, you've got so-and-so in there, we'll neutralize it. So he puts some more in there of something else, don't he? Now, for any of you that have had chemistry, you know yourself you have an acid and an alkaline. If you take a beaker or a glass full of acid, and you have a little test you can make, and you get a little pink piece of paper. You dip that little pink piece of paper down in that acid, it'll turn that pink paper blue. Well, you take another one of alkaline over here, and you dip blue paper down in that alkaline, and it'll turn it pink. You mix them together, equal amounts, dip a blue one down in there, it comes out blue. You dip a pink one down in there, it turns out pink. It's neither acid nor alkaline. It won't hurt either way. Now, if you spill acid on your arm or your table or chair, it'll eat a hole right in it. It'll do the same thing to your stomach. And that's exactly what causes ulcers. It's what causes cancer, partially. Now, if you get an alkaline down in you, it'll do the same thing exactly. But if you neutralize them, they can both be in there and they won't hurt you at all. Now, you know that isn't hard to understand, because you take water, if you took the hydrogen out of that water, it'd kill you. But the oxygen out of that water is the very thing that keeps you alive. One kills you, the other one keeps you alive. You put them together, it's the stuff you drink out of the faucet. But that's the same way with alkaline. That's what Dr. Hoxley does. But what about the damage it's already done? You know, we're doing exactly what you read of in Galatians and Romans, and you don't even know it. And we think about being justified by the works of the law. We get all mixed up and we don't know what it's talking about. But it means this: once you break the law, no matter how many times you keep it from then on, you've broken it once. You've broken it once. And you can never blot out that time you broke it. You can never have it blotted out, no matter how long you keep it or how diligently you keep it. Now, let's say you violate the law of gravity, and once you get out here on maybe the tallest building in San Diego, and you jump off the building.
Very fine.
Now, on the way down, you say, well, I'm never going to do this again. Now, that's exactly the picture. Now, it isn't going to make that smash any lighter when you hit, is it? It isn't going to break the fall at all, is it? Broken the law, and you pay for it. Now, if you never violate the law again, you're not hurt any further. Now, that's what he means by the works of the law. Once you break the Sabbath, you can keep it every week the rest of your life. But it still doesn't take away the damage that it did when you broke. It made you have to die the second unless Christ takes. Now that's the same bear out penalty, and so does Doctor. He says your son neutralize the poison that's making for any long been done to your body. And when you get sand in your gasoline tank, it wears out bearings. If you drain that sand out, you still got worn bearings, and isn't going to make those bearings back like they were and mend them and make them like new just because you drained the poison out. Now we need to get that clear where we'll never forget it. That's one of the most important tokens of healing. There's a difference. This has to do with forgiving sin. Because when you forgive sin, what do but take away the penalty? When Christ forgave your spiritual sins, what did he do? He took you out from under the penalty of death. He made the penalty stop right there. You didn't have to pay the penalty. That's what it means to forgive sin. Now, if he forgives physical sins that you commit, that means he takes away that physical pain and suffering that you're having to pay because you broke the law. Now, that's exactly the difference in divine healing. Now, here is a book by Mr. A. Allen, and he attributes everything to demons. So if you have a cancer, it isn't because you ate pork. No, sir. Now, you can eat skunk if you want to. He never tells you what to eat. In other words, he says, you go out and live like you please, and come in here and we'll heal you, and you can go back and live the way you please all over again. Now, you know, they never tell you, you'd better change your life, man. They never tell you, well, say, you better watch what you're eating here. Now, I want to read about the first minister, or the first physician, that the Waldens has ever heard of. Now, in case, just to build up for some of us that haven't had the magazine that mentions the 7,000-year history of the Church of God, in tracing the church that Christ built, that he said would never cease to exist, that the gates of the grave or hell neither could prevail against his church, that his church would always be here. And that church has always existed, and we've been able to trace it right down through the Ebionites and the Nazarenes. Now, that isn't the modern Nazarenes. Then you come right on down there from there to the Paulicians, then to the Waldens. Then you come into John Wycliffe, who was a Sabbath keeper. You come to some of these other men. Stephen Mumford, that kept the Sabbath here. And even a man as well noted as Benjamin Franklin, who kept both days for a while. He couldn't make up his mind. He didn't know which was the Sabbath day. And we can trace the history of the church by the Sabbath and the holy days right down to today. Now, in the days of the Waldenses, about 1200 A.D., they lived in a valley in northwest Italy called the Vaudois Valley. Now, I'll read here. Now, remember, this is 1200 A.D. At that time, the profession of a physician as a distinct calling among men was scarcely known. The clergy were expected to know something of the cure of disease, and in some instances they really attained remarkable skill in its treatment. So notice, until this time, these people in the valley of the Waldenses had scarcely heard of a physician, but their ministers always were qualified to advise them in the cure of disease. Now, I'll read how in just a minute. But with the knowledge of Eastern art, now notice where it came from, same place all this other rottenness did, the same place we get Christmas and Easter Sunday, from the east, from Babylon, right down there where Mother Semiramis, Tammuz, and all these others came from. But with the knowledge of Eastern art, which had come in with the first and second crusades, and with the persistent study of those naturalists whom we call alchemists. Now there's really where the divine term, physician, began to change. Now they started mixing the duty of a physician with that of an alchemist. A wider and more scientific knowledge of the human frame and its maladies was beginning to take the place of old superstitions and other delusions. And thus it happened that here and there was a man who, without being a priest on the one hand, or a barber on the other, now originally they always used barbers' instruments in operating, had gained the repute of understanding disease and the power of keeping death at bay. Now here he has a mention of the ministers that were there in the valley and what they used until this physician came along. They used herbs, barks, powders, and roots. Now there's nothing wrong with that at all. There's nothing unnatural about that. There's no alchemistry involved in that at all. Now let's read on a little further though. Here's what these first physicians used. Now I dare say none of you have seen this happen today. Maybe some of you that are older, that live back in the woods somewhere perhaps, had country doctors that were still wise in these ways. Now here's a man whose daughter was ill, and he says, what is this we're doing here? Is not there somewhere in God's world some potion? Now that even sounds witchy in the first place, doesn't it? Isn't there some potion? Don't you call it an antidote, which will put out this poison as water puts out fire? Well, the physician, setting the click of his talking apparatus more resolutely if possible than before. If there is, the wit of man hasn't discovered it. How should it? The water which puts out the fire is the same water that drowns the sailor. For aught you and I can tell, this root, of which the decoction seemed liquid flame when your daughter drank it, and she drunk poison. This same root that poisoned her may give life itself to some fish or beast or bird for which the good God made it. All that we do, my friend, now here's the testimony of one of the first physicians that the Waldenses ever heard of in 1200 A.D. Now here's his words. All that we do, my friend, all that we do is to undo what we did wrong before. We have tried to rid her system of this wretched decoction, and now we are trying to give time, whatever that is, and nature, whatever that is, and life, whatever that is, the chance to do their perfect work. We can do nothing more. The good God wishes and means to save health and strength and joy and abundant life. So much we know. And knowing that in the strength and life of a pure child of his like this girl, we hope and have a right to hope. Now that's his job. That's what he said they did. All they did was undo what had been done wrong. And then they left time and nature and life take care of the rest. Well, what did they do? Well, let's read and see what he did. Is this all? Said the father sadly after another pause in which he thought the doctor wanted to say more. Is this all? What is the mustard on her stomach? What is the rubbing? As he was rubbing her body with the cloth continually. What is the hot water at her feet? Did you see any medicine in there? Did this physician in 1200 A.D. use any shots? Did he use any drugs? Did he use any sorcery? Oh, well, replied the expert, after a longer pause than usual, perhaps, in what seemed like the adjustment of his machinery. What is it indeed? It is, now here's another mention, it is our poor effort to quicken and help from the outside. He didn't operate and look in there and say, well, let's see what's wrong. But he says this is our limit. All we can do is to quicken and help from the outside the processes of this nature, which is so mysterious in the beautiful machine. The hot water at her feet keeps them more near to the warmth which nature gives. My master taught me that when the foot and arm and leg are fully warm, each movement of the heart drove easily a tide of the blood of life itself through them all. You can see that the warmth of the jar should make that process easier for this poor heart, which finds its work so hard. Ah, well, it seems as if we help it more by the friction of these claws, as long as we don't annoy her by it, and as if these synaphisms wrought in the same way. We think we know that within her system, tinctures we've tried give the same help to a life which is too weak. Now, incidentally, they gave her wine. And a lot of us are still prejudiced against it. A lot of us are going to be sick. A lot of us might be at the point of death because we say something God created to be handled with wisdom is completely a sin. Perhaps they enable some part of her nervous system which the poison has not reached to act for the good of the part that it first affected. Now that's the first physician that the Waldenses encountered. That kind of a physician I wouldn't mind encountering. That kind of a man we'd like to have in the church today. We'd like to have a physician like that we could have to advise and guide in the church today. And you know, it's one thing the ministers in this world, as you read in Ezekiel 34, through their laziness, do you know the ministers used to teach school? You know where Sunday school began? You know when they first had Sunday school, they taught reading and writing and spelling and arithmetic in Sunday school? Well, what happened? Well, the preacher got lazy. That's what happened. The minister got lazy, and he said, well, I've got too much to do. Let's get someone else. Surely I don't need to be burdened down with this reading and writing and arithmetic. But you know, the Levites in the Old Testament did that. Yes, they had Levites in the individual cities in the Old Testament. It was their duty to teach. Well, the ministers got lazy. They needed more time to fish and loaf and lay around. And that's exactly what they do today, because I've preached in the Baptist church. I've had associations with Baptist ministers. I've attended fellowship meetings in Baptist churches where they just tell jokes, and that's all. And I wondered why they didn't invite everybody. There's just certain ones they allow to come, and you don't have an invitation until you get on the inside. Well, since I've preached a few times in the church, they said, how would you like to come to the Brotherhood meeting? I said, well, I might as well come once. Well, I didn't know how big that word once was. I came once, and that's all. All they did was sit there and tell jokes and talk, and that's all. Fellowship? What kind of fellowship? You get that down at the tavern or down at the pool hall. Some fellowship for a Baptist church. Well, you know, as we read, as you can read in any Bible dictionary, originally it was the duty of the minister. You read back in Leviticus chapter 13, 14, and all the way through there, and you see in the case of leprosy, whose job was it to examine the person? Whose job was it to see if he had a white spot on him, or if he had a hair come up in a white spot? Whose job was that? A physician's? A Levite's? Whose job was it to tell him what to do? Did he consult a physician? No, he didn't. When did they start consulting physicians? When the ministers got too lazy, that's when. As we read in this little book on the history of the Waldenses, the separate profession of a physician at that time was scarcely known. Well, we'd be better off today if it was unknown, too. Now, God's going to blame it on the ministers, but you know, when you read Ezekiel 34, you remember there that school teachers are part of those ministers. And you remember that physicians are part of those ministers. because they've taken the job that God gave to the ministry. They didn't come up and take it by force out of greed for money. They took it because the preacher got too lazy. Because he didn't have time to visit blind people. He didn't have time to visit sick people. All he wanted to do was fish and eat and preach twice a week. Now, I can say that. I don't think anybody can refute that unless you preached in churches too. Unless you preached in a Baptist church or Methodist church or some other church. Now, here's what this physician in his confession has to say. To physicians are entrusted not simply the property or money, but the very lives of their fellow citizens. Now, I ask every one of you, is your life yours to give to a physician? Doesn't your Bible say you're bought with a price? Where can you show me one scripture that your body is yours to do and handle as you see fit? I thought when you buried yourself, you said, well, I don't want to live anymore. I've had enough life. Boy, what a rotten mess. I'm tired of living. I don't want to live anymore, so I'll bury myself. Now, that's what you should have said when you were baptized, when you repented. You said, I don't want to live anymore. I'm sick and tired of living in this rotten body and this rotten world and all this rottenness about us. I kind of like the way Christ lived. I'd kind of like him to live in me. I think he can do a better job of it. Now, that's what you better have said. Now, who says your body is yours, then, to entrust your very life to the physician? Well, I want to come to a statement he has over here a little later. I have been frequently asked, why did you quit the practice of medicine? Was not that a useful business? Yes, it was. But I had come to feel that there were fields for which greater usefulness. In fact, that it was vastly more important to teach people the laws of health and life and to strive to lead them by precept and example to shun the causes of disease than it was to cure them when they were sick. That prevention was better than cure. Or is one of the famous, very famous statements of Benjamin Franklin. Now, he must have been looking the wrong direction, as we have one of the modern religions back to the Bible. As Mr. Wolverton mentioned, that's true. They've done a real true statement there. Well, they're back to the Bible. They're going this way and the Bible's back here. That's back to the Bible. You know, Benjamin Franklin must have been looking the wrong way when he made this very famous quote, that the doctor of the future won't be a doctor that deals in chemistry and medicines, but he'll be the doctor that seeks out the cause of disease and advise people how to live so they'll never be sick. Yes, that's the same man that didn't know whether the Saturday was the Sabbath or not and kept it for a while. That's the same man that was one of our greatest men that's ever lived in this land. But you know, he was looking back instead of forward. He said the doctor of the future. He should have said the doctor of the past did this. Apparently they had a little evolution then, and he was a little mixed up with it, maybe. Well, the doctor of the future hadn't done that. Now, maybe he was looking as far into the future as we are. I can guarantee you the doctor of the future will do that. I can guarantee you this. There'll never be a physician, in the term we use, in the kingdom of God. The way we use the word physician and doctor today, there'll never be one in the kingdom. Now, there are certain jobs that we'll never have there. We won't need veterinarians there because there won't be any animals there. There won't be any dogs there. There are certain jobs we won't have there. That doesn't mean that anybody who's in that job today is just lost forever. It doesn't mean that at all. It means he's going to have an abrupt change in his job before he ever gets there. Now, you know, Christ himself said it's scarcely that a rich man will ever get into the kingdom. But you know, Peter Waldo himself, the very leader of the Waldenses, was a rich man. Until he sold everything he had and gave everything he had to the poor people and went out preaching and lived on what he was given from place to place. He was a rich man. He got into the kingdom. I can say past tense because I know that he'll be there. Christ told the thief on the cross he knew he'd be there. I know Peter Waldo will be there. I know he was a rich man, but he wasn't a rich man when he was going to enter the kingdom, and he wasn't a rich man when he found out about Christianity. He sold all of his goods and gave them to the poor. And that's the way he gets in. And the physician, the only way he can get in is say, well, this rotten medical profession stinks to the high heavens. And when you read Ezekiel 34, God says, their rotten, abominable sins have reached up to me. And we're going to take them down and throw them out. Well, you read the Dowey version, though. Praise the physician, all you people. When you're sick, call for God. Repent of what sins you've committed, then give way to the physician. That's exactly what the world believes, isn't it? That's exactly. You ask a Baptist, do you believe in divine healing? Oh, yes, sir, I do. Well, how do you? Well, the doctor, he's just an instrument. He just has these medicines God put here and allowed him to discover them. Discover them. God didn't put those medicines here. God put leaves and trees and bark here. The physician says, well, wait a minute now, God, I don't think you balance that food. I think you'd be better. Now, look, you put a wheat kernel here. I think it's better to sap all the oil out of that and get the wheat germ oil, and it's better to take that wheat germ out of there and then get this over there and this over there out of the wheat and eat it separately. You shouldn't eat that whole wheat. That's a damnable lie, and it comes directly from Satan the devil. He's trying to improve on what God created. And you know, one of the very most important things that confounds atheists is that same little bitty kernel of wheat, same little bitty grain of wheat. They've never been able to create one. They can't understand it, and they can't explain it. But we give way to these alchemists that came out of Babylon. They take that wheat grain, they say, well, let's crack that up. God got an unbalance here. I don't think he meant to have that much. Let's sap that oil out of there so you get wheat germ oil. So people dashed out the health food store and they need vitamin E. Oh, here you go. $5, please, a bottle of wheat germ oil. So you take it and the next month, wow, you can see better. You're stronger. You're healthier. 6 months you get struck where you have to sit down to teach a class and you can't even stand up. Is our eye so short we can't see any further than that? Can't you see past the end of your nose? What's the matter? We can't see the trees for the forest, as they say. When are we going to learn to look through the Bible? If we can't see it through here, you better not see it. If you can't find it in here, you better not be following. We're getting into a lot of artificial, radical ideas about foods and health foods and vitamins and little pills. Well, how do we get around it? We just laugh about it. In health food stores, they have little joke columns in their magazines, and they show a person sitting down there, and they've got all the tables set, and they come out with a great big pot. They reach in with tweezers and pull out a little pill about that big and put one on each plate. That's supper. That's supper. It's got all the vitamins you need there, though. All you got to do is swallow that pill, and that's all. That's your meal. Now, who wants to swallow a pill? Don't you enjoy eating? Don't you like what you eat? Don't you like to sit down to good, tasty foods? We better get back in God's laws and get out of the hands of Satan. That's just how close he's got us. From that day to this, I have never bled a patient suffering from either pneumonia or pleurisy. Now, that's a real well-known cure of sickness. It's a little more old than what we use today. So, you know, if a man had disease in his blood, they'd say, well, let's see, you've got disease in your blood. If we drain out part of that blood, you'll have less disease there, won't you? Yeah, that's right. So they drain out part of the blood, but you got less blood there too, and blood fights the disease. Oh, well, your body produces more blood, though. Yeah, if you don't die from the lack of blood before it does. But you know, that's the way they used to heal. Now here's the one that provokes me worse than any, and seems to be the stupidest. How could any idiot in the world even think this is healing? And if you come with great pain and all, then they make blisters come on your skin, so it'll be more painful and you won't notice the other pain. And then you'll relax inside, your nerves relax, your intestines will relax then, instead of being knotted up with constipation and ulcers. Then you're thinking about this pain, so you're more relaxed. There's no pain in here. Now that's real healing, isn't it? I can't read one healing in here. In this whole book, I can't read one time that this doctor used to heal someone that he didn't damage him in another way. And I've never seen one place where you use artificial fertilizer that it doesn't do damage to your land too. Now what are we walking by? Faith or by these temporary eyes we've got here? And if we're walking by these eyes, what are you going to do when they're no more? What are you going to do when yours are changed like fire, like Christ are? You won't have these eyes anymore. From that day to this, I've never bled a patient suffering from either pneumonia or pleurisy. Neither have I applied a blister or given a cathartic or an opiate or any form of alcoholic or fermented drinks, either during the continuance of the above-named diseases or during convalescence, nor have I ever regretted in a single instance not having done so. Here's a man that was no longer steeped in the medical profession. Here's the only man I've ever seen in my whole life. Now, we've got some ex-physicians in the church that are coming to this, but they're not there yet. Here's the only man I've ever seen in my whole life that backed out of a lot of Satanism that he was involved in, that recognized that he no longer administered these types of healings, and he said, I've never regretted in a single instance that he didn't jump right in there when he saw someone suffering and started applying all of this rotten Satanism on them. Now, we live right next door to a little kid up in Oregon. Well, she was cutting teeth. Our little girl was cutting teeth, too. She had a little bit of a diarrhea condition, cutting her teeth, and so did our little girl. Well, the parents got all upset because this little girl had diarrhea and she was running a little bit of a fever. She wouldn't eat. That was the worst thing. She wouldn't eat. So they dashed her off to the hospital. They said, well, this must be some new type of diarrhea. We've never heard of this before. So they just injected shots, and the little girl, when she came home, had knots all over her head where they'd injected stuff in there because she was cutting teeth. Our little girl had fever, too. She had diarrhea, too. She was cutting teeth, too, but she didn't have all the knots on her head and all the poison in her body. Those doctors really did her a favor, didn't they? And yet one day when some of us may be struck down with yellow fever that's coming right into the Southwest in the next 6 or 8 months, you're right here where there's the receiving ground, as they call it, in the latest issue of the Pageant. Articles in here about epidemics, that our land is ripe for epidemics. This land of the Southwest, right in here, is ripe for yellow fever. It's now running rampant in Central America and is going north, heading right up this way. Now, maybe if it strikes some of us, and don't think it won't, when this Asiatic flu came, it struck more people, percentage-wise, in the church than it did outside. Now, what do you think about that? You say, well, this must not be the church. Let's go home. Well, you better not say that. That isn't true. God's just rapping our knuckles and saying, all right, now, you people wake up. This is coming. It's right here in the next few months. You better wake up and recognize it. If you're on a lot of pills and a lot of drugs and you're still got your trust in the doctor, you better wake out of it before it's too late. Let's turn over in Deuteronomy 28. I want you to see something here. If you're still trusting in these little pills that give you a little temporary relief, or in a doctor that you think he does make you feel better by certain things he gives you. Verse 27, Deuteronomy 28:27. The Eternal will smite you with the botch of Egypt, with the hemorrhoids, with the scab, and with the itch, whereof you cannot be healed. All right, if you're still taking your medicines and your pills, if you've still got all your faith in these sorcerers, as the Bible calls them, the Bible doesn't call them a physician. Luke and Christ were the only physicians that are mentioned in the Bible that we're following the same practices that a physician does. But your modern physician, as we read in this history of the Waldenses, began to derive his power from alchemistry, and that is termed sorcery, all the way through the Bible. Every time you read the word sorcery, if you want to read the Bible in a modern language, you put doctor in there, you put druggist in there, you put pharmacist in there, or alchemist, any one of them. And when you get home, I challenge you to do this. Look up the word pharmacist in your dictionary. I challenge you to do that and read it and see what it says. And you will read right before your own very eyes. It comes from the original Greek word pharmakon. P-H-A-R-M-A-K-O-N. You look that up in a Greek dictionary and it'll say sorcerer. It'll say a man that's involved in chemistry. chemical combining, taking things apart the way God created them, and combining them back according to his little bitty, puny, rotten, evil mind. And here we go up to this man and bow down like he's a god and take his creation, take a food he's created, drink it right down. Now, if you think the world is filled with good intentions and people in these health food stores, oh, they wouldn't hurt you. Well, I thought that, and I thought, well, boy, I'm sure glad we have health food stores, that we have Seventh-day Adventists, and we have other people that are conscious of foods, and they're sure a big help. I'm sure glad we have them. But I went into a health food store to get some sugarless gum. I read on the package, instead of sugar, it had another word on there. And the next time you buy any, maybe you better look on there and see if the same word is there. Now, they've changed the word now, but the last time I looked at any of it, and I'll say look at it because I certainly didn't buy any, the last time I looked at any, they had a new big word on there, and this old little word in the margin. And this old little word is the one I looked up. As the best I remember, the word was U-R-A-L, or U-R-I-N-A-L. Ural or urinal. Well, you check it in your dictionary and see it comes from human urine. You think they can't use that in gum? You better read. You better check it and see. You think they're aware? They're helpful to you, aren't they? Yes, and these natural organic vitamins come from whale meat that's an unclean animal. Oh, yes, and this insulin you get when you have diabetes comes from pig, too. And these little capsules you get, so many of your vitamins or your minerals in these little capsules. That capsule's made out of gelatin, which is made out of pork. Well, what's going to happen to us when it comes to this time? And God's going to strike us with these diseases whereof you cannot be healed. Where a physician will just throw up his hands and say, well, I don't know. And as they mentioned in this pageant, they said, well, this is some new type flu. And all the shots we had didn't do any good. They admit that in this article. This is some new type disease that we can't heal, in other words. That our serums don't do any good. This is a new disease that we can't heal. You want to face God as your healer now, or you want to put it off and when you're going to have to? It's a lot easier to do it willingly than to be kicked and shoved a little bit into it. God's going to plead with all flesh. That means he's going to just give you a little correction and kind of guide you along with a little whipping here and there for your own good to see that you get in the right place. See, it's easier to do it willingly. It's a lot easier to walk than to be dragged. God's going to drag you for your own good until you finally break the rope by too much holding back. Then hell's right behind you if you do that. The eternal shall smite you, verse 35, in the knees and in the legs with a sore botch that cannot be healed, from the sole of your foot to the top of your head. Yes, and people wrote in when Mr. Wolverton drew those pictures in the Plain Truth and said, well, what kind of a horrible God is that? What do you print that stuff for? We don't want to see that. You want to see it in a picture, or you want to see it literally? You want to see it in the Plain Truth magazine, or you want to see it on your Aunt Bessie, or on some of your relatives? Which way do you want to see it? You're bound to see it. You're going to see it in the next few months, in the next few years. I want to read a few more things of this position, and we'll turn. Now here he mentions in this new method of healing people that he practiced, he avoided the danger of causing a medicinal irritation of the bowels, which it's sometimes difficult to avoid, which he'd been doing in other medicines. He knew he caused an irritation of the bowels trying to help you with another disease. Now he said he was going to avoid that. Now he says, I've never seen these large doses of quinine do any good in typhoid fevers. You know, we said the burning ague, as you read here in Deuteronomy 28, with the burning fevers. Yes, scarlet fever, rheumatic fever, typhoid fever, yellow fever. They're right in our door path. I've never seen these doses of quinine they're giving you do any good in typhoid fevers. And as the use of cathartics, from my observation, I soon became satisfied that a vast number of lives have been lost by their use in cases of remittent and typhoid fevers. The tendency to irritation of the mucous membrane, which exists especially in the latter disease, being often fatally aggravated by cathartic remedies. Now, he admitted right here that he's seen people actually killed from the use of these medicines instead of done any good. Well, he's going to have some lives on his hands, too, that he's going to be responsible for. He's taken people's lives into his hands. He's done as Asa and a lot of these kings in the Bible, and about the first 6 chapters of 2 Kings, all you read of is healing. The whole 5 or 6 chapters you read. Now, this king, in his sickness, sought to the physicians instead of the doctors. He fell through the lattice and was sick. He didn't come down off his bed, but he died. Why? Because he sought the physicians. Way back then they had physicians. But they're not what Luke and Christ were. These men back then were sorcerers. They tried by enchantments, by certain little charms, by so many rabbit foots to keep a man from being sick or dying. Yes, and you read so many of those kings in those days, they sought to the physicians. They sought to the god of Baal or these other gods for sorcery, and they died in their sickness. Now here is a very, very important statement. The teacher of the class where he was taking classes in pre-med and medical school, here, gentlemen, is a case of disease which, like the smallpox, measles, and scarlet fever, runs a definite course. If you will let the patients alone, they'll generally get well. But if you commence dosing them, you will often bring on complications and they will die. This statement, coming from a medical man of his prominence, surely was worthy of consideration. That's the teacher of the medical college. Had that to say. Now, you know, in every case, everything we've read so far shows there's 3 types of healing. One, there's a natural healing that your body does itself. This physician we read of here in the Waldenses, he said, we only try to help nature. We help from the outside by a hot water bottle at the feet to speed up circulation, by rubbing and massaging with a towel to keep up circulation. We help in that way by the wine that they pour in to speed up circulation. We help the natural powers. We help the natural powers do the healing. Well, you know, when a man goes on a diet, as we read in this Dr. McCoy, and he takes orange juice and water only for so many days, and he's completely healed of deafness. God didn't heal that man. He might have been a Baptist or a Methodist or an atheist, agnostic. He might have been a Chinaman. But he went on a diet. He purged out the poison that he'd put in his body. He could hear again. Now that's that nature healing again. That's the natural healing powers in the body that God put there. And you glorify God in that too. You don't glorify any man because he tells you what you've eaten wrong and tells you to avoid it. God put that natural healing in your body. And like this original physician said, we just help by the outside nature to rid the body of the poisons. That's all you do, and that's all you can do. There's one thing no one has ever said they could do, not Dr. Hoxie, not anyone else, but these so-called divine healers. And that's forgive the sin. That's to forgive the sin and the damage that the poison did while it was in there. You can take the poison out by yourself, that's true. The more poison you take out of yourself, the less suffering you'll go through. The less number of diseases you'll have. That you can do. But to heal yourself, you don't have the power. Neither does anyone else. Now, as he mentioned right here even, with diseases like smallpox, measles, scarlet fever, depending on how much poison in your body, depends on how severe they are. The less poison you have, the lighter case you're going to have. But if you just leave your body alone, it'll run the course. But does that mean if you have scarlet fever, if you have the measles, you shouldn't call for a minister? No. No, it doesn't. Because when God heals, He stops the penalty right there. But if you go on and allow the penalty to go right on through your body, then you've paid the penalty. You're not healed. If you let your body throw off that poison completely, you're not healed at all. You've paid the penalty. When you commit a sin, if you eat pork, that isn't an eternal sin. God doesn't say, now, that's going to take your life forever. He says that's going to cause you to suffer so long, and when you've paid that penalty, when you've gone through that time of penalty payment, then you're well. But that isn't divine healing. You can come with the measles. Now let's take the measles just for an example. If you have the measles, there are three things you can do. You can just leave them alone completely and do nothing. Now, very few people ever die of the measles. Your body will throw it off after a while, after maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. After your body pays the full penalty, you're rid of the measles. That's one thing you can do. Second, you're rid of the measles. That's one thing you can do. Secondly, you can go on a diet and start drinking water and liquids, start flushing some of that poison out of you, and the penalty will be cut down quite a bit. You may only go a week or 5 days. Thirdly, you can call on God and ask God. And maybe in a day or two it'll be gone. Maybe immediately. But you'll never pay the full penalty when you do that. You never will, because that's divine healing. So you have divine healing, you have natural healing. They're not the same at all. You have divine healing, you have natural healing, and you have fasting to help rid yourself of the poison. Now that's three distinct things. You don't ever get them mixed up. Because if you just start fasting, you're not in God's hands. And you know a person can have a cold and they'll say, oh, well, my body will throw that off after a while. Well, a month from now you get another cold. It takes a little longer to throw that one off. Another month you get another one. It takes a little longer to throw that off. Finally, your body isn't strong enough to throw it off anymore. So the cold throws you off, takes you out, and death. Now that's true. And the more you allow your body to pay the penalty, the shorter your life gets. The weaker your body becomes. The weaker the organs of your body are. But if you come and have God heal it and take it away right there, you're just adding years to your life. Then if you just jump immediately and fast, you're going to even add a few more years. We need to know the difference in these healings. Yes, even the doctor admits that if you leave smallpox, measles, scarlet fever, and those types of disease alone, they'll run their course. In other words, your body will pay the penalty. When the penalty's paid, it'll end. Now here he mentions another thing. The type of remedies he used, when properly used, don't have the same effects as the regular medicines. Now get this, what regular medicines do to your body. They do not benumb, in other words, deaden part of your organs. Deaden your liver and make it less active. They do not benumb, nor do they seriously aggravate existing diseased action. They neither cause diseased action in well organs. Now that's one of the very prime methods of healing today. They take a well organ, inject a germ in it, inject the germ into one of your well organs of your body, and it stirs up that much more resistance in your body. Well, they reason then that if they do that, then that'll help the disease that was already there. Of course, when you get over it, when you get well, you've got two organs that are a lot weaker instead of just one. In other words, by trying to get a shortcut, by trying to get around paying the penalty, you pay the penalty twice. You pay it twice. Now you remember the same thing is implied on Babylon in Revelation. Render to her double. Double unto her. On Babylon. Because she put these things on people herself. Because she was trying to get people into the kingdom in a shortcut, in another way. She says, oh, well, you don't have to spend your whole life. As soon as you die, you have an immortal soul. Or you don't have to wait till the time of the millennium to meet Christ. As soon as you die, you can. They try to get us to think we're going to ascend up into heaven like Satan thought. Now here he mentions this silver that they put in little babies' eyes. nitrate of silver and acetate of zinc, which applied to well eyes will cause irritation and inflammation. Now, he admits they'll do that. But now, if you take the same nitrate of silver and acetate, since they make your eyes bloodshot if they're not already, since they irritate them if they're not already irritated, then if your eyes are already irritated, it'll heal them. Now, that's what he says. I'll read it in his words. Nitrate of silver and acetate of zinc, which applied to well eyes will cause irritation and inflammation, are often applied to inflamed eyes. They sometimes seriously and even dangerously aggravate the disease so that the vital forces do not react and thus affect the cure. Now, here's another mention he makes about the method of healing that he used, and shows by contrast the natural healings of the medicines and drugs of doctors. The great beauty and excellence of this system consists in the ability to treat patients successfully thereby without making well organs sick, or aggravating existing disease action, or creating an opposite disease state, as you do when you give a cathartic remedy in a cathartic dose for constipation. In that case, the reaction, if reaction follows, is not in the right direction. Consequently, the constipation is often aggravated. I have hardly, now in other words here you say, well, I'm constipated. I'll have to get something to force that through. So you take a laxative. Well, what if it isn't powerful enough to force it through? And you know, there's something there blocking it off. Isn't it rather sensible and even sound for a little kid to say, well, now let's see, there's something blocking it. Let's get whatever that is blocking it out of the way, and then it'll pass right on through. Well, we had a lady in the church in St. Louis. She had this very same trouble with constipation. Well, she had milk of magnesia. That makes her bowels act. But her bowels wouldn't act, so she was going to make them act. Yes, they acted all right. But they didn't know at the time that she had a tumor blocking it. Blocking the passage, a physical protrusion there, a tumor blocking it. So her bowels acted all right. They couldn't act downward, so they acted upward. So she started bloating and bloating and bloating. Now, if they hadn't cut into her right away, she would have just burst and died right there. Burst wide open and all of her insides just falling right out all over the floor. Because they said, well, let's see, there's something blocking your bowels action. Let's put something in there to make your bowels act. You can do it. You can make them act all right. So what if you can? They're going to act, bloat you up, and burst you. I have hardly ever seen, excepting in cases of mechanical obstruction, now notice, I have hardly ever seen, except by mechanical, by a tumor or a protrusion there, by a mechanical obstruction, a severe and troublesome case of constipation that had not been caused by the use of these laxative remedies. Now this is coming from a medical doctor. This isn't coming from the little head I've got or the little brain I've got as far as medicines. So if we give an opiate or an astringent for diarrhea, we can see that it is a direct effort to restrain the disease by force, as it were. And we necessarily have to give large doses. And if the vital forces react against this medical intrusion, the reaction is not in the direction of health. And that's as strong as he can say it. I can say it a lot stronger than that. It is true that the vital forces sometimes overcome the diseased action in spite of the medicinal action. Sometimes your body throws it off in spite of that rotten poison you injected in there. Sometimes your body is strong enough that it'll throw it off in spite of what you did to it. Not for it. But it does not always do this. And subacute and chronic diarrheas are the result of the use of such remedies in some cases. To create disease of a well organ for the sake of curing disease in another organ, as is done. And when cathartics are given for diseases of the head or lungs, everyone can see is a roundabout treatment. And while patients may sometimes be benefited by this calling off, as it were, you call off the attention of the vital defense of your body from the disease action in one organ and bring it over to a weaker or to a less important organ. So if your heart's affected, get it down on your kidneys. That isn't quite as important as your heart anyway. Now that's really, that's healing. That's the kind of healing you want. That's the kind the doctors use. Still, it is not a very satisfactory treatment as a whole. I'd say it's a rotten, abominable, damnable type. For you may lessen the vital power of resistance against diseased action. Now, he has a lot more in here I could read. I don't want to take the whole time just reading here. One more. In typhoid fever, there is a tendency to irritation of the mucous membrane of the small intestines. And as I have already stated, I am satisfied from observation that when cathartics are given during this disease, this irritation is often most seriously aggravated, and death not unfrequently follows as a result. He's seen people die. He knows they've died because it's a gamble. They inject the poison into your body, gambling, that it'll excite your body just that much more. But if your body just is at the ebb, it's using all of its power as it is, and you inject another poison, that's just certain death. It's just the same as this polio vaccine. You know what happened from this dose they had here in San Francisco? They got some live germ instead of dead from the insides of a monkey, which is an unclean animal. If you want to eat monkey, or if you want to eat snake or turtle, if you want to eat pig, it's the same as taking that out of his kidney, taking a monkey and killing him, and taking this liquid out of his kidneys and putting it in you. Now what if they inject a live germ instead of a dead one? Well, if they inject live when they're giving you polio instead of taking it away from you, which they did. Did you hear any heads fall? Did you hear about anybody being held accountable for that? Do you know of anybody that was fired and lost their job and kicked out? You didn't hear a thing, did you? They reprimanded them. Oh, yes, but how many people died? Well, our own ways are just eating us up. One of these days we're going to learn that God means what He says. You're going to read how many times you read in the Bible. Now let me put this plain as I can put it. When you read in the Bible that Asa sought to the physician, if you go down to the doctor and he recommends medicine, you're doing the same thing exactly. And don't fool yourself. Don't say, oh, well, this is a different kind of doctor today. Don't fool yourself. Say, oh, well, this is natural medicine here. You know, that's like saying an immortal soul, a natural medicine. The two words just exactly contradict each other. There's no such thing as a natural medicine. There's no such words. Now, in the first place, the word physician in the Bible means natural. It comes from the word physics. Now, you look up in any high school book, in a physics book and a chemistry book, and see the difference between the two. Physics is a natural science. Chemistry isn't. Physics is the study of things as they are. Studying things as God put them here, and what makes such and such do such and such. Studying the laws of gravity, studying this. What's chemistry? Well, chemistry is taking a little bit of this and mixing a little bit of this in with it, and splitting up this and splitting up the atom and seeing how you can divide it. Well, let's see, God put the P here this way. Let's split it up and do this to it and that to it. That's what chemistry is. That's what sorcery is. And when you read here in Revelation 22, verse 15 of Revelation 22, speaking of the kingdom of God, speaking of this new Jerusalem where there are no tears, there's no death, there's no sorrow, no grief. For without, outside the kingdom, left behind, burned up in this rotten world when it burns, outside of the kingdom, burned up in the earth that's already passed, were dogs. Now that doesn't mean the puppies, but that means sodomites, sexual perverts, dogs, sorcerers, physicians, chemists, druggists, pharmacists. Put any word you want in there, they're all the same word. For outside the kingdom, having been done away with in this temporary world, are all sexual perversions, all medical practices, whoremongers, murderers, idolaters, and whosoever loves and makes a lie. Now notice all these people stem from a liar. They come from their liar. Satan's the father of the lie. You know, Christ told the Pharisees, why, you're of your father the devil. He's the father of the lie. You're liars because you're his children. Well, here's another group of people that love and make a lie. If there's ever been anyone that loves and makes a lie, I'll guarantee you, sorcerers, doctors, physicians, pharmacists, they're all in this. Now, they're in it in ignorance. We don't mean the men that are in those offices are going to die. We mean they're going to have a mighty rough time like a camel going through the eye of a needle to get into the kingdom. They're going to have to throw off all that rotten things they've built up in their head and cleanse their minds from it. There's not going to be any of them in the kingdom. There's not going to be any sexual perversion there. There's not going to be any idolaters either, or whoremongers, murderers. They're all classed together. You remember, the next time you go to a doctor, next time you go to a physician, you let him prescribe medicines and drugs and all these things, don't forget, it's the same as if you were going to murderers, idolaters, whoremongers, sexual perverts. They're all classed together. I don't mean by this that it's wrong ever to go to a doctor and see what's wrong with you. But I do say if he has to take an x-ray to see, which makes $5 or $10 more in his pocket, so he'll usually tell you he has to. If he's going to x-ray, you better just go on back and leave him alone. If you want to see a doctor so he can tell you what's the matter with you, that's all right. And anything other than that, I'd say no. And God would say no. And one day you're going to be answerable. Now you look up how many times the word sorcerer is used here. It's in Revelation 21, it's in Revelation 17, Revelation 18, verse 23, Revelation 18. Here's the whole chapter about Babylon. The whole chapter about Babylon. Verse 23, and the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in you. No, there won't be any more selling of candles. Go down and light for the dead people or anyone else. The voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in you. They're the only ones that can marry, and if you've been married 6 times, if you weren't married by a priest, you just weren't married. Oh yes, they believe in divorce and remarriage. They believe that you're not to break that law. They believe that's a command. But the whole thing is, if you've been married 6 times, unless you were married by a priest, you've never been married. Now that's the way they believe in it. Well, here's their picture right here. There won't be any more of their lighting candles and no more of their performing weddings in that church. Your merchants were the great men of the earth, for by your sorceries all nations have been deceived. By your loving lies, by their damnable sorceries, all nations have been deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets, saints, and of all that were slain upon the earth. You know, that is quite inclusive, isn't it? Notice he doesn't say you just martyred the saints, does he? Did he say you just killed some of God's people? What did he say? In her was found the blood of prophets. Yes, they killed the prophets. And of saints. Yes, they killed the saints. And of all that were slain upon the earth. You mean even someone like Abel? Some of these people since then that these doctors have killed? Now you'd be surprised. One of the women in the church in Pasadena, when she was having a baby, they gave her anesthetic to put her to sleep. Now this has been quite a few years ago. They gave her anesthetic to put her to sleep. Well, when she woke up, she looked up and there was a great big light over her. She didn't know what was going on. There was just a great big light, just like a boxing rink or something. Well, she looked up, she started to look around, and there was just a whole great big audience down there. There she was, right there on a table, on a physician's table in the nude. There's a whole bunch of medical students in a little cage type deal. They were there in a class. He was teaching them about childbirth and about the different things there. There she was, a guinea pig being used. This doctor's there just lecturing away to all the people up there and all these students. They were just sitting around and he was lecturing away. She started to get up and started to say, well, what's going on here? And they just whopped her again with another needle. Well, this time when she woke up, she was back in her room. Well, the husband started to take out a lawsuit. But even his lawyer wouldn't take the case. He said, why, you couldn't do that against the American Medical Association. He said, if you try that, she'll never get out of the hospital alive. They'll kill her before she's found. And if anybody else in that hospital tries to testify, they'd kill them too. Now, you think that is... Well, what do you look for entertainment and the joy of life, the amusements, the recreations, or recreations? That's where the word comes from. They do very little recreating in the movies, you see. They don't recreate any happy atmosphere or happy spirit about you. We could say, here's your entertainment gods right here. We'd have this nation fairly well summarized as God does. Here are gods. Now, you know, a lot of us, and I'll guarantee you this, if you were in doubt when I started with the sermon, when I read from a Bible about glorifying physicians, when I asked you the question about the shots for polio vaccine, you said, well, that's right, I sure agree, boy. I'm getting tired of some of these fanatical members here that say, boy, just strict natural foods, and that's all. No pills, no junk, no doctors and medicines, none of that at all. I'm tired of those people. Boy, I think it's all right to go to a doctor, and some of these things you've got to distinguish what's a medicine and which isn't. I don't think it's wrong to take aspirin or black draught or penicillin and this and that. And if you were in that class, I'll guarantee you right now, you're on your way out. You're on your way into plagues and diseases whereof you won't be healed. You're on your way into plagues that God says are going to come in the next few months. And you're going to go to a physician. He's going to say, well, this is some new disease. We can't help you. If you go to Dr. Hoxie, he's going to say, well, we don't have any chemical to balance that one in there. I don't know what that is down in your body there now. We don't have anything to neutralize it with. If you're trusting in diets, it's not going to heal you either. Remember, God's the one that heals us. By His stripes we're healed. He says, if any sick, call for the elders of the church. Let them be anointed and prayed for, and the prayer of faith will save the sick. Now, finally, in the conclusion, I want to turn to one verse. You hear so many people talking about, but Luke was a physician. Well, that's a rotten lie. The way the person meant it. They meant, well, now, look, you can't tell me doctors are wrong, because Luke was a doctor. Luke was not a doctor either. Luke had nothing to do with chemistry whatsoever. Nothing at all. Christ was a great physician, so whatever Luke was in, Christ was in. They were both physicians, and Christ was the greatest physician. So whatever Luke used, Christ used even in a greater way, because he was the great physician. Now, Luke didn't forsake his occupation of a physician when he came in as a disciple, because he wasn't a doctor, because he was not a surgeon. Oh, but your doctor will say, well, now, wait a minute, you're just a fanatic. Why, don't you know even where the first operation was, the first anesthetic was used way back there in Genesis? Haven't you ever read that? It says, and God caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam. Well, what's the matter with you? Now, I've had a medical doctor tell me that about having babies. And what's the matter with you? Don't you know that God used it himself? Why, he put anesthetic into Eve there, and Adam. He caused Adam to go into a deep sleep. Well, that's somebody that loves a lie, isn't it? That's somebody that's going to defend himself no matter what happens. Even if he has to lie about it, he's going to defend himself. Even if he has to lie in front of a court with his hand on God's word swearing, oh no, they didn't have that woman in there using her as a guinea pig. Oh no, sir, no, they didn't do that. They're going to lie, and anybody that won't lie, they'll kill them. Yes, it's a good old world, isn't it? You know, a lot of times we think, well, we can get a little bit of this world without getting the rest of it. You know, there's no middle road. You take all the world as it is, or you take all of God as it is. Now, there's where we go astray. And a lot of us, we think, well, I'm not fully persuaded. Now, I think it might work out having two wives. Really, I think I might be able to work that. But you don't understand. If you try to get along with just the two wives, you've got to lose God as your healer. You're going to lose the Sabbath day. You can't take just one thing out of the world and the rest of the things out of God's. If you choose one thing that you refuse to give up in the world, you have to take this rotten medical profession with it. You have to take all of them as your physicians. You have to take the entertainments of the world. You have to take the whole world right along with it. All this rottenness, all the thievery, all the larceny and the rape and the murder, you have to take that right along with it. You're going to take the bitter with that little pill that you think's the sweet. Yes, Christ was a physician, but he wasn't a doctor. Luke was a physician. Let's see how he exercised that job. Verse 30 of Luke 10. Now, you know, this is rather interesting, that this is the only book of the Gospels that this parable's mentioned in. Now, why did this man that was a physician, this parable stuck in his mind, it just went right over the heads of Matthew, Mark, and John, but it stood in the mind of Luke, and he wrote it down. It was really important to him, because he was a physician. Let's read about it. Verse 30, Luke 10. And Jesus answering said, A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment, and wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. And by chance there came down a certain priest that way, modern Baptist minister maybe. It applies today. These scriptures aren't out of date. These weren't just talking about back then. Here comes one of our ministers today by, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Well, that isn't my job. That's for the doctor. That's the physician's job. I can't do that. So he passed by on the other side. Well, likewise a Levite, when he was at the place, came and looked on him. So at least he came over and looked, and then he went by on the other side. Now, that wasn't his job either. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, now here's a Gentile, a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was. When he saw him, he had compassion on him, and went to him. Now here's the parable. And Christ doesn't use anything in a parable that he wouldn't apply literally. All right, what's going to happen if you ever get beat up, or if you ever have cuts on your flesh? You're going to drop that little bit of iodine in there and pickle your skin? Go ahead if you want a big scar on there. Go ahead if you want to pickle your skin. You think it doesn't do it? I guarantee you it does. And every time a boxer gets a scar on him, another boxer aims right for that scar every time he hits. So all I've got to do is hit right on that scar enough and it'll break again. That's right, because your skin's dead there. You've got two dead pieces of flesh clinging together slightly. Well, some of us are prejudiced, so we'd say, oh, we don't want Christ living this in our life. Now, part of the things Christ did, we'll let him live in us. But boy, when he did this, we wouldn't let him do that in us. And he went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and fermented grape juice or wine, and set him on his beast, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. Every single word there you can apply, you can use. Man lives by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Now, I've been surprised. People have been startled in the churches that have used oil and wine on sores instead of iodine and alcohol and mercurochrome, methylate, and all these other things from chemists, from sorcerers. All these other sorceries. And wine disinfects, kills all the germs. What does oil do? You read in Isaiah, it mollifies a wound. Let's see if I can find the scripture here. I won't have time to read that. In Isaiah 1, verse 6, ointment mollifies a wound. It keeps it soft. It doesn't make it hard like it does when you put alcohol on it and kill it. But oil mollifies, keeps it soft, where it just naturally weaves itself back together. And your skin goes right back together. And in the majority of cases, you will never even see a scar. In the majority of cases, if you use wine and oil and bind it up with a cloth, you will never see a scar. You don't believe it? You try it. I've tried it. Well, there's just one example. We have other examples. We have examples in Ezekiel, I think it's chapter 18, about a little baby. When they're born, they rub them with salt. Well, we bathe them in oil. It does just the opposite. They rub them in salt to make their skin tough in texture. We put oil on them and mollifies, makes it real soft and dainty. We like a little dainty, delicate baby. They like one that could stand the weather when they'd have to travel, one that was healthier. So you read there and see what they did. They swaddled the baby, they rubbed him with salt. Proverbs 20, verse 30, you read that blueness comes before healing. That when you get a little blue circle around a wound, that doesn't mean you're getting blood poison at all. That means that the healing is beginning to take place, not according to me, according to Proverbs 20:30, according to Solomon, not to me. Now, I don't need to Mark 5, verse 26, about the woman that suffered many things with many physicians. Finally, when she spent everything she had, what'd she do? Well, she did the same thing people we get letters from did. They thought, well, now maybe they could get something down here at Mr. Allen's tent meeting. So they went down there. They didn't get anything. Well, then they thought maybe a doctor could help them. So they went over there, and they didn't get anything. And finally, when they were all out of money and didn't have anything left, they finally wrote in a letter and said, say, Mr. Armstrong, I've tried everything else. I might as well just give this a shot and a try. Well, they found the same thing this woman did when she tried Christ finally. But why do we have to be so thick-headed and so hard-headed? Why do you go out and spend $5 for a little old jar of pills when all you've got to do is come to the minister? It doesn't cost you a thing. We don't charge a thing because it isn't for sale. Now, if you try to pay us to do it, we won't even do it. You couldn't pay us big enough to have us do it. But you'll go out and you'll buy these pills or that pills or this neutralizer or that neutralizer. You'll go here to this tent or that tent. You're endangering yourself with demons when you get involved in a lot of these Pentecostal meetings. Why are we so thick-headed as Israelites? Hasn't our head been softened up a little bit? It really should be. We don't have to learn like this woman. Spent all she had on many physicians. She sought the specialist. And after she'd spent every cent she had, then she came to the great physician. She was healed. And you know, one thing that's provoked me and stirred me more than anything in reading and studying this subject for healing, all the commentaries, all the religious commentaries about Exodus, about these different healing subjects, they say the waters in the Jordan had a certain alkaline nature and salty nature that if a man with leprosy dipped in the water itself had some mysterious healing power. Now that's really something. That's what healed Naaman, you know, when he went and dipped in the river 7 times. Of course, if it's the water that does the healing, why dip 7 times? If it's the water that does the healing, why didn't you find people all ganged up there like they were in John 5? Never read a word about it, do you? But you know, people follow that. And you know, even after these miracles of Christ, kings that laughed and said, well, he wasn't anybody, he was just a man. They denied that he was a God. And yet when he left, when he was crucified and killed, these same men would find blind. Some of their own company would go blind, and they'd go out and they'd get a certain clay. And they thought this clay, if you spit in it, now the older man there, the oldest man should spit in it because there's something about his saliva that made it extra special. And then they'd apply that to the blind eyes. They thought that would heal because that's what Christ did, you know. He used a little spittle and dirt, mixed it, and put it on a blind man's eyes, didn't he? And he was healed. And so what do these men do? They try to practice sorcery. They don't get the fact that God heals miraculously. All of those men don't even know what divine healing is. This Dr. McCoy, in all of his cases of healing, he's never seen one case of divine healing. I was startled until some of the people in some of the churches said, I've never seen any miracle. I've never seen a miraculous healing. And they too thought, well, maybe there was something to this, that your body naturally does it, and you help by the diet. Now, that's a lot of nonsense. We had a man in the church in Eugene that had a big rupture here. He'd let you feel it. He said, feel that rupture there, just a great big bulge and knot there. And he was anointed, and on his way home, he always fidgeted with it, and on his way home, he just reached down there and it was gone. Now, you know, if we were Pharisees, we'd start looking around in the car or in the church and say, well, where'd it go? That's what they did when Christ healed. And you know, the man that was made blind, what did these scribes and Pharisees say? They came up to him and said, how did he do it? How did he do it? What did he do? There must be something there. If we only had that, boy, we could sure sell that. We could really make money with that. How did he do it? Well, he used a little spittle and clay, so they did that ever since. You know, that's one of the supposed ways of healing blindness even now in those lands of Arabia and over there. What kind of nonsense? It just testifies that the Bible's true. Well, I hope we know that God's the healer, no one else. I want to read now, in closing, the same thing we started out with. Testimony to the world about a healer, and you better watch yourself if you have this idea. If you've ever had this idea, or if you even lean in the slightest way to this, you better listen. You can read this same thing yourself if you just go out to the library and get a Dowey version of the Bible. Turn to Ecclesiasticus 38 and you'll read it. Honor the physician for the need you have of him. For the Most High has created the physician. For all healing is from God. Oh yes, they all believe in divine healing. And he shall receive gifts of the king. Any gifts you give to someone that heals you, they should be given to God. The skill of the physician, that's what lifts up his head. And in the sight of great men, the physician shall be praised. The Most High has created medicines out of the earth. That's a lie. He created natural herbs and barks and things on the earth, but he didn't give you the right to practice sorcery and split them up and divide them and mix a little of this with a little of that. You're creating yourself, you do that. You're getting involved in sorcery. He's created medicines out of the earth, and the wise man will not abhor them. Now, all you radicals, well, I'm radical too then, because I abhor them, because God didn't create them that way. Was not bitter water made sweet with wood? No, it wasn't, was it? You think it was a tree that they threw in there that made that water sweet in Exodus? You think the tree did it in Exodus 15? You think the Jordan washed away Naaman's leprosy? You think it was that clay that Christ put on the blind man's eyes that healed him? What about the other blind man that he didn't use clay with? What about the other people he raised from the dead? Some people he touched, some he didn't touch. Some he used clay on, some he didn't. Some he healed by the leprosy of dipping them in the water, some he didn't. What healed them? All right, now notice, wasn't it the bitter water made sweet with the wood? The virtue of these things is come to the knowledge of men. And the Most High has given knowledge to men, that he may be honored in his wonders. By these he shall cure and shall allay their pains. And of these the apothecary shall make sweet confections, and shall make up ointments of health. And of his works there shall be no end. For the peace of God is over all the face of the earth. My son, in your sickness, neglect not yourself, pray to the Lord. Oh yes, they believe in divine healing. You've got to pray. And he'll heal you, but how? How does he do it? Turn away from sin. Yes, you have to repent of whatever you did. Of course, they don't tell you what, did they? Turn away from sin and order your hands aright, and cleanse your heart from all offense. Give a sweet savor and a memorial of fine flour. Make a fat offering, then give place to the physician. Then you do your penance and repeat your beads so many times. Make a fat offering, offer these things, then give place to the devil, to the sorcerer, to the physician. For the Lord created him, and let him not depart from you, for his works are necessary. For there is a time when you must fall into their hands, and they shall beseech the Lord that he would prosper what they give you for ease and remedy for their conduct. He that sins in the sight of his Maker shall fall into the hands of the physician. That's so much wise, and that's exactly where our modern idea of healing came from. A lot of us, we've wavered. The Bible says they'll deceive all but the elect. So that means about half of you or more right here won't be here. And half of you is going to be because you're going to forget a lot of these things. You're going to take them lightly, or you're going to say, well, I still think some medicines are all right. You get one little tiny law in your mind, and you break the laws of unclean meat. About certain... Now what's the answer? And if a person opens the book and reads you these facts, if a person opens the Bible and reads what I read to you, where are you going to find an answer? And you know the Bible says that unless the time was shortened, they would deceive even the very elect.
Additional programs and literature available at hwalibrary.com.